Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Modern Market, where every day we discuss everything to do with the modern market, that is the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot of money on the internet from the normal markets or the election market. Huge news today. We're going to be discussing everything to do with the election as it relates to the markets, which we are focusing on every day. Loaded up for discussion today, we have Bitcoin hitting $75,000, new all-time high on Trump presidential election win. It's now settled at around 74K. Next, Peanut, Goat, Doge, and Luce, new memes lead the meme sector. Interesting discussion to have there as a consequence of the presidential election result. And also Polymarket data widely decided as the big winner from the last, not just the last 24 hours, but also the kind of last season. The data reveals the election result well before media reported widespread crypto support and celebration of Polymarket. We'll be diving into some of the best aspects there too. Today we've got Sammy and Brad in the co-host seats. We're ready to get into it. But just before we do, just a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. This market is very, very risky and we do not know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Brad, how are you doing? It is Wednesday. It's the 6th of November. It is the day after the election results. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I'm excited to be back because I had to bail on Monday. I don't know if you told the audience why. Last minute, left all my shit on the airplane. That wasn't
You
cool.
did not discuss that publicly. You wanted to make sure you
Yeah.
got your assets verified and back first.
Shit was not cool for a little bit there, but yeah, I had to bail last minute. Just landed in Chiang Mai, whatever. So glad to be able to contribute a little bit here. Yeah, elections are going crazy, even though I'm halfway, literally 12 hours separated from my home nation. People are still talking about it like wildfire for valid reasons. So I'm still immersed in U.S. politics.
Love it. Well, very glad that you haven't lost all of your money and all of your seed phrases and all of everything else as part of
Just
all
my
of the stuff.
sanity.
Yeah, you lost a little bit of your sanity for a brief amount of time, but that, I guess, it has returned, I hope. Sammy, Wednesday, 6th November, day after the election results. How are you doing? How are you feeling?
Very good, very good. I actually had a bit of deja vu from 2016.
Did you?
Waking up and so I think it was my mum came into my room and woke me up and was like, "Oh, Donald Trump has won the election. Oh, and Boris Johnson has got in as well." Just like two crazy moments. But yeah, it's a bit of deja vu, but obviously a bit more excited, a bit more involved in crypto now. So yeah, keen to see how that repercussions unfold. So.
Did you? Yes. So obviously that's the big news. Trump has more or less been announced. I saw very recently, within the last hour, the major news outlets have started to announce him too. Sometimes it's not always the case of getting to the number. You also have to wait for certain media to start announcing. So that seems to be happening as well. We're going to get into all of that and more in just a little bit. Sam, did you stay up? What was your election night strategy? Did you stay awake? Were you trading it at all? What were you thinking?
No, I was thinking it's going to be a busy day today. So get an early night and wake up early. So I was up at about 6-ish a.m. UK time. Just saw the result. And then I think it just broken that kind of Trump was ahead and Polymarket kind of adjusted the odds by then. So I was just like, okay, kind of understand where we're at now, which is good.
Nice. I ended up staying up, not a huge amount of time because I didn't really want to stay up that much, but I did end up staying up for a little bit because I didn't really know what I wanted to. I felt like I wanted to bet on something. Like I wanted to express a bet.
The masculine urge to bet on something.
It was inevitable that I was going to spend ETH on something. And it took me a while to decide what I wanted to do. And I don't think I was going to go to sleep without pressing the button. So I needed to press a button yesterday. I did in the end. The thing that I went for was the Department of Government Efficiency coin on ETH. So like the one which is the new Doge, basically, was actually one of the leaders today. And we're going to talk about how some of these newer memes seem to be the one that have run hardest. And we'll do a little bit of a conversation on what various traders are actually thinking about the risk return of betting in the meme sector, because yes, people talk about, yeah, oh, it's going to be a meme coin super cycle, but there's clear different tiers now within memes and how to think about those things. So it seems like these newer memes are the ones that responded best. So I ended up putting a very, very small amount on that, just like a fun amount. But because I took so long to decide how I wanted to express the bet, it had already run loads. And I think when I woke up this morning, I saw that it was like 47% up or something. I was like, oh, great. But that's 40% up on where it was 24 hours ago. By the time I got in, it went up a bit and then it's just come back down to exactly where I got it. So no, I didn't make the bet early enough, but I was just happy to participate, I think.
I did see. I saw Trump Jr. asking people to shill him coins, so I'm assuming
Oh.
he's probably put some money behind a few as well.
Interesting. The other thing that I did do, which I found quite interesting, well, I basically couldn't tune out, was I started watching the Wizard of Soho's like trading stream live. And I
Is he
didn't,
doing that now?
he was doing it, yeah. So he was, there's a few people actually, there's a bit of a trend at the moment, isn't there, to start just streaming and trading. So you've got the guys out in LA like Frank and Thread Guy and that crew who are definitely deciding, look, we're just going to go live and just, I don't know specifically if they're like actually just shilling random tickers live or if they're more just like trade with us style videos. I guess the net effect is probably similar. But this, with the argument being, look, let's just be transparent, let's just have fun. Of course, some of these things are just going to send while we're doing it because they've got a huge audience. But there's that. And then Wizard of Soho is doing some stuff as well. This was the first one I actually watched. It's pretty interesting, man. Like, I think he's a bit controversial as a trader, at least on the timeline, because sometimes he pumps like lower stuff as well. But he's quite insightful. Like if you actually listen to, he was talking for like a long period of time, maybe 60 minutes or so. It's pretty interesting. So I'd kind of recommend tuning in and hearing his thoughts on the market in general. But look,
I think Calio also is probably worth looking at. I think he does some live charting. I've seen his live streams a few times. I don't know if it's trading specifically, but it's definitely charting.
yeah, I think we're moving towards live, whatever it is, it's going to happen live. If you're with the people live, you might get a chance to make money because they're going to say something and then everyone's watching is going to do it. So I think that's an interesting trend to just keep an eye on as well. But look, we've got a lot of stuff to get through. Huge news coming out of the States in the last 24 hours. Trump was victorious in the US presidential elections. That's what we're going to be talking about today. But let's get you up to date with all of the price action and headlines first, just to get you up to speed. Starting off with the price action on the majors. Just going to share my screen. Remember that we are live on video and we are live on X audio as well. We have Bitcoin, which is up almost 9% to 74.6. We've got ETH up also 8% to 2.6K, and Solana up almost 16% to almost $190 at 187. ETH sounds so damn low now compared to all the rest, right? Just still in that 2.4 to 2.6K region compared to the others, which are now, Bitcoin past all-time high now. So that's the majors. In terms of the meme side of things, Dogecoin, the major Dogecoin is up past 20 cents, up almost 18%. You got Pepe up 15%, WIF up 15, Popcat up 18, Bonk up 19. These are double-digit gains for the majority of these coins. Mog's up 11, Nero's up 30, Goat is up 45. The key point that we're going to talk about a bit later today is that it seems like the very top gainers were all of these latest memes. So Peanut was up almost 100% earlier. Doge, as in the Department of Government Efficiency meme, was up 70%. Goat, as we just said, is 45%. Brainlet is up 40%. What are these other ones? Nero, as we said, up 30. So it's like one stage later than the older memes, even from this cycle, which are the ones moving the hardest. So we'll have a bit of a discussion there. Getting into the headlines themselves, we have just pulling this up on screen for you. We've got Bitcoin hitting 75K on the Trump presidential election win, settled at 74K now. As we said, Peanut, Goat, Doge, and Luce are the new memes which are leading the sector. And Polymarket data revealing election result well before media reports. Widespread crypto support and celebration of Polymarket. Interesting, the founder of Polymarket had this to say. They said, I just got word that the Trump campaign HQ literally found out they were winning from Polymarket. History was made today. That is pretty surreal. We had commentary from John Charb saying mainstream media needs to integrate prediction markets in future elections. I was checking Polymarket constantly, giving way faster and more accurate assessment than any media source I know. A bunch of people who have already said this, but a huge W for prediction markets. Tonight, we'll be discussing some of the implications of the election results and the significance of Polymarket as well, actually. As we go through the show, some notable sales from around the space. Main thing today is that CryptoPunks are sliding and have been sliding for a while. CryptoPunk sales are as low as 23.5 ETH now. That's probably the main notable sale. I think most people are kind of focused on the election stuff at the moment. Getting into the NFT market, just looking at the Mintify heat map. Again, I think the big movers, probably Milady's up 7%, Sproto Gremlins up 13%, which is, of course, one of the Murad NFT project, which is also a Murad NFT, up 20%. Remilio's up 6%. So those are the big movers. Rec Guy's down around 10% or so, and Pudgies have slid just beneath 8 ETH for the first time in a long time. So I think those are the notable moves on the NFT side. I didn't bother writing any other Web3 roundup for today. I genuinely did scroll and attempted to find some more news, but realistically, we're not going to talk about anything else. And I don't think anyone was even reporting on anything else, frankly, in the last 24 hours. So full focus discussion on the results of the election and their implications. That's what we're going to do today. Sam, before we get into the main bits of news, any reflections from this kind of process on? I wanted to just ask both of you first, on a personal level, like how you felt, because I've definitely felt a particular way about this one, mainly because it's like the first one I've been more heavily invested in the crypto space, and therefore I feel so much more correlated to the market. So personal reflections first.
I can go first. I think it's an interesting one because I thought I'd be more over the moon. I think it's probably because the price action has literally just touched all-time highs, come back below, and then just like hovered. And I don't know if it's going to be this accumulation phase where it just goes on for a little bit of time and accumulates before it takes the next leg up, or whether, like, God forbid, if it's a head and shoulders pattern where it's like a double top and then down. I think all the structural changes, like my logic is just saying, like, there's just so much changing. And if they put it as like a strategic reserve asset, then that's another step forward, which is kind of going with what Trump originally said. So my head is just saying, like, it just makes sense that it's going to go higher. But I do have that anxious feeling like, okay, it's going to dip a little bit, consolidate for a long period of time. Like, when is it going to happen? So yeah, I'm bullish, but I'm also a little bit hesitant about putting leverage on.
Fair enough. I think that's fair. Brad, what about you? I know you tend to try to steer away from both the price action side of things and the political side of things. But big congrats to you for the announcement yesterday, I believe it was, or the day before, where you announced you're now like building with Mega ETH, which is like a big thing. Now that you're more involved with the team specifically, does the political side and the regulatory side matter more to you? How have you been thinking about this? How are your kind of personal reflections on this election process and the result at the moment?
Yeah, first of all, thank you. Yeah, so for anyone in the crowd who didn't see me tweet it out, I'm officially part of the core team for Mega ETH, which is a L2 on Ethereum. So really excited about that. It's still so new to me that, like, considering anything in the context of like it impacts me as a crypto business is still not a thing.
Sure.
And you're right. I don't look at anything traditionally when it comes to money. Like, I don't think about the election and think of like, how am I going to trade this? How am I going to make money on this? I am thankful that the outcome is bullish for our structural industry. And actually, in a conversation with it today, because again, it's saturated both the timeline and conversations here in Thailand. The downsides you could see from a Trump election, if that is your prerogative, you don't agree with like maybe the policies of the Trump thing, even though it is bullish for crypto, you could believe that because blockchain is such a powerful technology, the regulatory clarity that would come from a Trump win could potentially outweigh some of the damages. Again, if you believe that it is a damaging administration, that would come from that same administration. So if you believe in this industry enough, that you think it's powerful enough, that the implications of these things actually being able to get a foothold within the American economy, then that net benefit is more than what you could see from a negative of your party losing. So I thought that was a good glass half full way to look at that if you're potentially against the party that won.
I think that is quite a smart way to look at it. Like if you did find yourself, if you were on the Democratic side in this one and you're like super bullish crypto or super involved in crypto, at a minimum, I mean, obviously I think it's completely fair to have a variety of reasons for voting, although I understand that some people have made it like a single issue vote. But like at a minimum, the crypto situation is markedly better, right? I saw this montage of Trump at the Bitcoin conference, and I actually watched that speech live and kind of just watched some of the highlights again. It's like, it's pretty crazy, right? It's pretty crazy that the guy turned up to the Bitcoin conference and just went at it as well. Like really went for it. Look, I don't know how specifically he individually is clued up on all the little details, but he was definitely got the right advisors in the room, at least when it comes to saying the right things. Not the right advisors in the room when it comes to launching your own DeFi protocol and trying to raise more money than any other team at the moment and selling like Bitcoin trainers. Like those advisors don't need to be around. But the general advisors saying like, look, crypto is seriously important in this country. More and more people have it and hold it and care about it. And it would be wise for you to go out there and make that known. What a brilliant move from that perspective. And look, I don't know again how much of the decision is purely because of that. But Brett, like we've spoken about so often, how it's so important to just put yourself out there, like vocalize the things that you want so that other people know. And I think in the end, at least as it relates to crypto, that was one of the things that would have hurt the Democratic Party, because even the people who wanted to vote for them and were in crypto, and I'm sure many of them would have done anyway for a variety of reasons, but they just weren't coming out to say stuff. The things that they had to say were things like, oh, they did say that they were going to be supportive of digital assets. It's like, that's not vocal. That's not
say the words.
Yeah, that's not signaling to that group of people strong enough, right? So as long as so much as it relates to, insofar as it only relates to crypto, the Republican Party obviously just went out and vocalized that more, that struck a chord with the crypto people more. And so I think at a minimum, from that crypto perspective, we're in a decent position. Any reflections on that, Brad?
No, I think you have it right. And you, at the start of this, asked like, how does this feel relative to previous election cycles with it comes to crypto? And you're right, like it's never even been relevant. And like this point, like there was never a clear outcome. So even though, I was aware of the industry and participating, there wasn't a clear, like one side is probably more beneficial for us than anyone else because they frankly did not give a shit at the time. So now that it actually has elevated to that, even as part of the headlines, leading some of the discussion, leading the actual conversation because of Polymarket, it feels way different this time. And whether or not you care about it because it's politics, you care about it because it is so heavily influencing where this industry goes, and it is in a bullish direction. I would agree with that.
Okay, very good. Look, I'm very much looking forward to getting into a bit more of a deep dive. Sam's prepared a number of data points, interesting analytics, which we're going to share in just a second. Before we get to that, Funky, want to welcome our resident Bitcoin expert to the stage. Want to get some reflections from you here, Funky. What are your thoughts, personal reflections, thoughts on the outcome of the presidential election?
Jam gang. Yeah, I mean, I think you've touched on some important points. To give you some specifics, yes, the Trump team has surrounded himself with very prominent people in the industry, including Ryan Selkis from Asari, David Bailey, who is the one who's been hosting the Bitcoin conferences for many years at this point. So it's not surprising to see that. And to your point about being more overt in your support of the industry, this is what they were just saying last month at the Blockchain Association meeting. Dave Grimaldi, who's like the head lawyer for them, telling the Harris campaign, if you are not explicitly stating your support for the industry, it is going to be a problem. Now, big picture, I think this is a greater turnout or outcome than I really had anticipated even yesterday when I was saying I could see Harris winning the popular vote. I mean, Trump effectively won in a landslide and repudiated the Democratic platform on every level. I mean, not only winning the popular vote, winning the White House, they now have control of the Senate. They have just a couple of seat advantage in the House. So we are going to see, I believe, sweeping regulatory change, right? Starting with the getting rid of Gensler, put in, I wouldn't be surprised to see Hester Pierce, aka Crypto Mom, who's been talking about Bitcoin needing, sort of that clarity in the industry since I believe 2018. I would not be surprised to see her put in charge of the SEC just because of the advisors who are very pro crypto that are actually talking to Trump and his team. So I think this is probably a far better outcome than anyone could have anticipated if you are working and trading in this industry. I mean, we were already talking about it just at my company where I'm the director of protocol relations, like what this means for our infrastructure business, because now the US will probably get a lot of clarity from both a legislative and a regulatory side. So I just really think this is just the very beginning of something absolutely incredible that no one really has any idea of where this is going to go.
Love it, man. I think that's really, really helpful kind of, well, behind the scenes looks on two fronts. One, the conversations that the leaders of the various organizations you mentioned are kind of having with the various parties. Also from, the business owner perspective and the infra side, who knows what kinds of things will finally get unlocked as they're able to kind of participate more in the economy that we're participating in. So appreciate that additional information, Funky. Hang around with us today. Definitely want to get some further reflections from you as we go. Let's get into the headlines then. The first one, obviously, being the election result, Trump winning versus Harris. I'm going to pass over to Sam here, who's going to take you through what happened, key events, key data points, and then talk a little bit about how Bitcoin could, as a part of a strategic reserve, how that could be potentially interesting for the US debt problem.
Yeah, sure. I mean, Funky's done a very good job of summarizing what's happened in terms of the thing that I was probably surprised about was the popular vote and how much of a landslide that was. So I'm going off the BBC stuff, which is actually a little bit delayed compared to Polymarket news. So I think going to actual sources, Polymarket now feeds into Bloomberg. Bloomberg's actually they've got a news site as well, so it does make me think that Polymarket seems to be a good source of truth and a lot more timely. But yeah, getting into it, I think they won both the popular vote and the electoral vote, so a landslide is expected to be a landslide. I think there's been current standing, I think 279 versus 223, so they've gone past that 270 mark, so you can see on the screen now. How that impacted the Bitcoin price as soon as that kind of went past or approached, it kind of broke new all-time highs, hit that 75k mark. It is now ranging down. I think this is an interesting thing, though. I think this ties in with the strategic reserve asset point, just in terms of the fiscal debt problem. So if you look at the chart for the fiscal debt, that has escalated quite significantly over recent years. By and large due to kind of those recession periods. So it kind of the money printer gets turned on and the spending goes up. So therefore that ends up in a deficit on an annual basis, which then accumulates to become this 35 trillion debt figure that we can see now. So you can see that on the screen, it's gone up to 35.46. There's actually a real-time image thing that I thought was pretty interesting. So if B-Check can just flick over to that screen. If you've got epilepsy or anything, look away now because it's pretty bright. But there's
this is an epileptic nightmare. What are we looking at here, Sam? And just explain it for the people who are not watching.
So this is a US debt clock. It's literally accumulating. I think if you look at the overall total finger in the top left-hand corner, that's accumulating about 1 million additional debt every few seconds, which would give me PTSD. But yeah, ultimately it breaks it down by the different segments, so you can kind of see how things are flowing in real time. I don't know if it's like a real-time feed or whether it's just projections that are updated in between when it does get that real-time information. But it's pretty interesting just to see that kind of almost snowball. And I think that leads to the question, well, what's the solution? And there has been this people have alluded to having Bitcoin as a strategic reserve, and that could effectively be used to pay down that debt. So if you put Bitcoin in reserve, it becomes an asset on the Fed's balance sheet, and that can then be used as it appreciates in value, the assets on the balance sheet will effectively increase, which means that you can then maybe realize some of those increases, sell it off, and then pay down some of the debt. So we spoke about this term of inflating our way out. Ultimately, if asset prices go up and you've got those asset prices, the assets that appreciate significantly on your balance sheet, then you can effectively sell that or sort of net off some of that debt. There's actually the last Fed balance sheet that I looked at, so 2023. I don't think 2024 is going to be available for, well, at least if it's December year end, it won't be available till like mid next year or like Q2, early Q2. So I think like this, it just demonstrates that the actual assets are pretty low. I think it's probably now at about the 7 trillion mark. The deficit is, or the debt is significantly higher, which then leads to a net debt figure of 35 trillion that we're seeing today. However, if that Bitcoin gets added to the balance sheet, the Fed Reserve balance sheet, then you could effectively see that potentially increase over the next few years. But it's not like it would definitely need to happen in conjunction with a number of other things, because if you look at how much Bitcoin the governments currently hold, like the US is the biggest holder of Bitcoin. I think CoinGecko has a chart there that shows how much each government has. The US has about 213 Bitcoin. So at the spot value of 75 or 74K, I think that's around about 15.7 billion. So it's nothing compared to what the actual deficit is. Now, even if that went up to like a 3 million mark, it still wouldn't, like 3 million per Bitcoin, it still wouldn't like make a dent in that deficit. So I think it would have to be done in conjunction with cost efficiencies, so like spending cuts, maybe tax breaks to boost economic activity, and therefore maybe some additional tax revenue from companies being more profitable, as an example, and then you can kind of pay down that debt over time. So it's definitely a long process of doing that. But by no means, I don't think that we should consider Bitcoin as a strategic reserve asset as being insignificant. I mean, if you look at the total market cap of Bitcoin, what you're looking at just over $1 trillion. If the national debt is 35 trillion, it would have to go up significantly for you to then start paying it down. And also, I think, why would you sell an asset that's appreciating significantly over time? You'd probably want to hold on to that, maybe take out a more favorable loan against it, and then pay it down in the hopes of doing that. So there's probably ways that the government can do it, but it would have to be done in conjunction with other things. The other thing that we've seen photos going around of Elon and next to Trump, and I don't know where it was, but he was being pegged as like this Department of Government efficiency person. So maybe he'll be involved in trying to get that debt down quite significantly. And we've seen a post going around about Elon being the #1 KOL for that. So it'd be interesting to see how that plays out. But I mean, he's got the audience on this platform, and it seems to be a pretty good place for real-time information. So
as an American, those numbers are still so wild to me. Like the actual debt numbers. I like, Funky mentioned it a few weeks back. Like, you remember whenever it crossed a certain number and like people start getting crazy with it. I remember growing up, like, I think it was like 3.5 trillion was the number. And now you're saying 35 trillion. At the time when I heard it the first time, I was like, that's a lot of money. You just see like the images of like a stack of dollar bills, and then what it looks like is 100 and a million. And like, then you see trillion, you're like, oh, it can cover half of America. And then now you're at 35 trillion. That's like, still boggles my mind as an American.
But it's crazy as well, though, because like, even if they do try to inflate their way out, like the average person who doesn't own these assets that inflate, like, they're going to be worse off. So it's not a solution. Like, there is going to have to be some proper like spending cuts and things like that to kind of bring it down and make it and normalize it. So it's a tough one, and it'd be interesting to see if Elon does get into that position where he helps to try and improve it. But to wait and see.
Yeah, super interesting. Thanks for the summary, Sam. That's brilliant. So dealt with just the core numbers. Obviously, I think people are on top of that already as they're waking up and getting on top of what happened in terms of the specific election results. I wanted to move into the implications. So that's why I wanted to touch on the Bitcoin reserve aspect. Also want to chat briefly on the regulatory side. Funky mentioned earlier Gensler sacking. That was actually one of the videos that came up in the montage of Trump's speech at the Bitcoin conference, where he said, day one, I'm going to get rid of Gensler. So that was pretty interesting. Want to consider that. And then this Elon aspect. I want to touch on that too. So maybe just taking the strategic reserve stuff first. We're just going to put it back on the screen, the numbers that you shared, because this is pretty significant, guys. Like, yes, people. The reason for the people who argue against US debt being a problem, the argument is something like, yes, we have a problem, but what else are you going to do? Where else are you going to put your money? Like, in the end, yes, we have a problem. Yes, it's not great, but look around the world. All your problems are relative. In the end, that doesn't like solve your problem necessarily immediately. But when you look at this Bitcoin chart, I'm kind of approaching it or looking at it in the same way, where it's like, okay, so yes, the United States are in a big hole. So is everyone else in different ways. But United States also have the most Bitcoin, like on a relative basis too. So yes, they're in the worst case scenario, they're in a bad position, and from the debt perspective, maybe not as bad as other people. And then from the Bitcoin perspective, it's not like there's going to be somewhere else that's going to turn up. Well, at least according to this data. Obviously, we don't know who. Maybe other people are accumulating quietly. We don't know those things 100%, right? This is just a chart that we found on CoinGecko that are articulating the number held by particular countries. But to go through this, you've got United States at 213,000 Bitcoin. You've got China at 190,000 Bitcoin. You've got the United Kingdom at 61,000 Bitcoin. Then you go straight to El Salvador at 5,800, Ukraine at 1,300. I can't believe that like Russia don't have a huge amount. I can't believe that even India don't have something. Like I raise a big question mark against these numbers, but nevertheless, United States.
So this would be known. So you can go to bitinfo.charts, and that has the big, it kind of analyzes the wallets of holding Bitcoin by different categories. And these ones are kind of in the top kind of 20 wallets. So you can actually track them, and they're known. So they're doxed to those governments. There will be other wallets, and it has to be spread across like a significant number to then aggregate to something more than like, I mean, El Salvador probably. I mean, if you look at, I think there's a couple of wallets because they don't know who they are. Like Mr. 100, he buys in clips of 100. Mr. 5,000, like he's only made a few purchases, but he's got like several thousand Bitcoin now because he bought in a couple of clips of 5,000. So there are these wallets, and I mean, there could be like suggestions that these could be governments, but just doing it secretly. So yeah, I mean, there is that possibility, but it's that chart on CoinGecko is just known governments.
Got it. Very interesting. Well, nevertheless, my takeaway from that is what a brilliant, dominant position to be in. Like, yes, we're in a bad position. Yes, the states are in a bad position from a debt perspective. They might have part of the solution on a plate with them, with Bitcoin in some way. That's just where my thinking was going with that. A couple more things I wanted to touch on as it relates to the election results. The regulatory side, maybe I'll come to you, Funky, who kind of mentioned this already. Trump did say at his Bitcoin speech that he was going to get rid of Gensler. From someone who's been building in the States as part of a company on the infrastructure side for quite some time, you mentioned one person in particular. Do you want to share who that might be? What do you think that would unlock? You said it could unlock a lot. What would that feel like as a builder in the States to unlock the infra side with some better regs?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, he can't, just so we're clear, he cannot fire Gensler. That's not the way it works. A lot of people just get all excited about, I mean, but he does have the authority to influence these decisions, right? And it's not going to happen until at least January 20th or whatever, when he's sworn in.
Great.
So it would be something that's still a couple of months away. But more importantly, who the replacement would be, one of the people that is constantly being speculated upon is Hester Pierce. She is, so the way the SEC is constituted, I believe there's like 5 board members or something like that. And then one of those board members is chosen to be the commissioner. So kind of the public face, if you will. Hester Pierce, very famously, since I believe 2018, has been a Bitcoin advocate, talking about how you need to have regulatory clarity around this asset long before anybody else. And of course, we've just seen these battles and tugs of war play out between the CFTC and the SEC. So if she were to become the head and face of the SEC, I think that is extremely bullish for the entire crypto industry. Now, getting into the infrastructure provision part of it, for instance, we only run fully owned bare metal and tier 4, tier 5 SOC 2 compliant data centers. We are really targeting enterprise customers, institutional clients. But even still, many VCs, for instance, do not want to invest in our company solely for the reason that we have data centers in the United States. Many times now we have multiple entities. We have a UK entity. We're about to spin up a Cayman entity. It's very difficult for us to pass KYB if we use the US entity, but if we use the UK version or now the forthcoming Cayman version, it allows us to get in and provide info. Even though we have centers, I think it's really good for any other crypto business in the United States. I mean, we've talked about this, we've beaten this like a dead horse. We know it's the global capital markets. The US is outpacing every other economy on earth. Nvidia alone is worth more than the whole German economy, right? This is not going to slow down with Trump coming into office. And now if you have Elon and trying to push all the tech and really make America the epicenter of technological innovation, I think it bodes very well for the rest of this decade. And assuming that he comes in, and I think any Republican would want to come in and just reduce the amount of regulation, it's only going to be a boon for the entire industry, regardless of which particular sector you may be building in or working in. I think it's just good for the big picture, as Brett noted at the very beginning of the show.
Thanks so much,
Thumbs
man.
up on Mr. Purse, by the way. She's been on several podcasts, crypto specific podcasts, and you can actually she understands this stuff and she's an advocate for, again, clarity. So yeah, double thumbs up there.
Really interesting stuff. Thanks so much for that additional info, Funky. Positive stuff. Looking up then from that perspective as well. The final thing I wanted to touch on was the Elon angle, actually. I think it's pretty hard to ignore how much effort this person went through for, obviously there's probably some personal benefit involved in kind of helping Trump to win as well. But he really went out in a way that I don't know that the Democrats were able to do. Obviously there was this thing where they were rolling out particular celebrities, whereas Elon came out and kind of, I saw him described as the best KOL around, in the sense that he worked for his bags more than anyone else, right? I thought it was quite a stark contrast how some celebrities were coming out, maybe reading a bit of script and then disappearing, whereas Elon was like out on the campaign trail. The interesting, maybe general trend here that I've seen people talk about is how the Silicon Valley class, like the technologists, have finally woken up to participation in politics. You had Elon getting very, very involved. You had someone like David Sachs from the All In podcast, who is very much kind of, supporting the Republicans, Chamath as well. They seem to be activated and more participating in a way that I'm sure they were participating before, but it felt like they really took a swing at it and wanted to influence and participate more. Brad, what's your kind of reflection on that? I'm showing on screen here an image of Trump, Dana White, CEO of the
UFC.
The UFC went out of my head for a second, and Elon all sitting next to each other. The caption is the CEO, the CMO, and the CTO. Not bad when you're like drawing on private experience in that particular way. Any thoughts on this kind of influence from private industry and the kind of increased participation?
Yeah, I wonder if it's a byproduct of restlessness, of like just being kind of fed up with the system. And I think that's kind of like a general thing. But one thing that actually stuck out to me on the timeline was a tweet by Fubar, who mentioned Elon specifically and how he has parlayed like 6 separate bets on a binary outcome event and it working out in his favor, right? So like it was PayPal, it was Tesla, it was SpaceX, now it was Elon, or now it was Trump winning the election, and like all those things. If it goes wrong, he's bankrupt. Like he's done, he's out. Like shit does not work out, and he's fucking crushed every one of them. Like he's ended up on the right side of it and just like grown his aura, I guess we'll say. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, Twitter as well. You missed Twitter, and I think people
Twitter,
talk about
Jesus.
People talk about a 44 billion price tag for it, but actually he's building out XAI, and then he's literally got the biggest town square, so he can then use that to his advantage. And I think that probably, you look at Polymarket in terms of like a tool for that, and then also Twitter. Like, it's an incredibly powerful thing that maybe if he hadn't acquired it, maybe he wouldn't be in the position that he could help Trump as well as he could.
I really like that perspective, and I think I think some people are. I think Elon rubs certain people the wrong way in particular ways, but you have to, at some point, you've got to hold your hands up and just be like, fair enough, man. Like, you lay it out all on the line, and you work harder than anyone, I think, to try to get towards whatever specific objective you are in a maniacal way, like in a completely crazy way, completely determined. As you said, I've got the tweet open here. Zip2 rolled that into PayPal, rolled that into Solar City. I don't even know what that one is. Rolled that into Tesla, rolled that into SpaceX, rolled that into Twitter, now rolled that into Trump. Incredible. This is a quote from Fubar. Incredible set of courageous parlays with very real risk of getting wiped each time. Even the best and brightest usually stop swinging after one or two big wins, right? Because you try to take some risk off the table. But I think he's just absolutely gone for it. And I just wonder, like, Rogan's pod with Elon was the one that dropped just before the election day. And that's the one where I think Rogan, as part of the tweet, or maybe this was separate or was around the similar time, I can't remember exactly, but that was the one where Rogan came out to endorse Trump as well. I just wonder how much of an influence that type of stuff has had on the election. But fair play to the guy. He's really gone after it and really swung for the team that he believes in. Funky, final point on this, because then I want to hand over to Brad to get into some of the real interesting quirks on Polymarket and why that's been such a success in the last 24 hours and the last season. Big success for crypto. Funky.
Yeah, just a quick note on the whole Joe Rogan podcast thing. I was starting to watch that Scott Galloway piece I was talking about for Diary CEO. He mentioned that the 44 million people up to that point that Trump had reached on the Rogan podcast was orders of magnitude. Like, if you took every major network, and he had the basic statistics down, where like on an average night they get 700,000 to 800,000 people viewing. He said you would have to have it on every single major media platform, plus actually across 10 days or something like that, to even get close to the reach that one podcast did. And he talked about how major media is down, and this year podcasting is up by like 39%. So yes, I think there is a lot to be said about Rogan's influence and his reach and getting people on there, whether it was Trump or JD Vance or even having Elon on right before the election. So I think there's something to be said about that.
Love it. Thanks for that additional point. Not only are we long on crypto, we are long on media as well. Citizen journalism, people who are actual participants in your space, being the people who report you stuff, taking your information from experts rather than waiting for some middleman who's coming over to interview you on something that they don't really know about. That's why we're building what we're building as well. And that's why I think anyone who's doing something like that, owning their own media, is going to do very, very well moving forward. Look, we've only got 10 or so minutes left of today's show because we've obviously spent a lot of time on the election, rightly so, because it is the big talking point for the day. We're still talking about it as we kind of slide into a Polymarket conversation. Brad, what was the big data points here? What was so interesting for you? Huge winner from the last 24, 48 hours and this cycle in general.
Yeah, actually, the last point by Funky was a good segue, because we're talking about obviously Polymarket and the dissemination of information and the truth seeking that the prediction market allowed for during the election cycle, right? So as information became relevant in real time as this thing was unfolding, you saw the odds be reflected on Polymarket, which, for those who don't know, crypto native app. It allows you to place bets on the outcome of a binary event. In this case, it was who would win the election. And we saw that the actual reflection of real-time data was showing up there in Polymarket in the odds much faster than it was in traditional media, which, as you know, all has their own particular biases where they lean into, right? Where they want to reflect incentives, whether it's ads or whatever, right? They want to keep your eyes on the TV. So we saw this throughout the election, basically, that all major players were leaning on Polymarket because the data was real time. And for people who don't understand the dynamics there, the general belief or the thesis of why a poly market can be powerful is because even if you have someone that is fanatical and emotionally buying on something that would skew the market, that the market itself would step in to arb that out to find the truth of the current situation because there's money to be made. And I think this is kind of vindication of the product that like it was telling us the truth or leading us to the actual outcome far before traditional media outlets. So a lot of people were proclaiming traditional media was kind of dead as of today whenever we saw this stuff come forward. And I kind of agree with that.
It kind of leans into that theory of the theory of the wisdom of crowds, where ultimately the average of people come to that consensus a lot more efficiently than someone on the mainstream media.
Yeah.
For me, it's the lag time. Like if you think about just the distribution of information, and like this tweet you have here calls it out really well, right? Like if you think about all these pollsters that get their information, they bring it forward to the actual like people that have to display that news, whether it's CNN, whether it's Fox, whatever. They then have to see this data and then decide how they want to interpret that data to then reflect it to the rest of the people that are watching, right? So there's lag time in that decision-making process. You obviously give it over to a few people, whereas whenever you have permissionless systems like crypto, you have that information being displayed in real time because there's profit opportunity. And that seems to be a very big incentive for finding truth.
Yeah, I completely agree with everything that you said. Very interesting. The tweet that you referenced said this. This is the thing. This is what Brad shared and thought was relevant. The lesson is that real-time data from markets are far more interesting to people because you can watch the market react to events and news. Polymarket, like all markets, is an aggregator of all available information, and that is valuable. That is the lesson. So I think a huge win for Polymarket. As I mentioned at the top of the show, what was very interesting, or maybe just an interesting part of the story, was the CEO of Polymarket sharing that he found out that the Trump team found out. They got word that the Trump campaign HQ literally found out that they were winning from Polymarket. So considering that to be like history being made as the official, fastest, best news source. Very, very interesting. One additional implication that I was thinking, because we've been talking a lot about stable coins and bringing money on chain and various other things on chain, was this tweet from Jeremy, who is Jeremy Allaire, who's the CEO of Circle. He said, USDC powers leading prediction markets, Polymarket and Kalshi. Money, information, and markets all need to work real time, 24/7, anywhere in the world. And you can see how, again, if prediction markets are going to be powered by crypto, because that's the best way for them to operate in a permissionless way, that is yet another brilliant vacuum to suck in dollars that would have existed somewhere else ordinarily into the on-chain economy, whether that is stable coins first in order to participate in some of these prediction markets, and then after, once someone makes some profits, into ETH or Bitcoin or Sol, one of the majors after. But at a minimum, it's growing the on-chain economy, growing the demand for the on-chain economy. Brad, final point.
Yeah, I mean, this pulling it away from that and just crypto broadly, like this is the reason why whenever I sit here and say I don't care about numbers up and to the right, all that stuff, like the point you just made for me is why I can rest easy building in this industry, because it's frankly like it's better technology for the things that we want to do, for the things that people want to do. So like it doesn't, like opinions don't really matter, because the incentives for these entities to use this shit is there because it's better, right? They make more money. It is effective. They can grow their TAM. Like all of that stuff is there if they leverage blockchain. So like it's going to happen. And I believe that it's rocky as shit, right? Like we were going up and down, like things sideways. We chopped for a couple of months. Like that stuff happens. But like if you see stuff like this and you see like why the value prop is there, whether or not you actually believe or understand that there's blockchain in the background, you know that there's there. And that's kind of why I've been able to rest easy and not really worry about pricing on any given day.
Yeah, that's such a nice like synthesis of why we're doing what we're doing. It's just like ultimately we know that this is better, therefore it will figure itself out very, very soon. Funky, final point on this, then I want to give people a quick update on the meme side, because I know that people will want to know that, and we will run a little bit over today, but I think that's important. Funky, final take here.
Just a quick thing that to dovetail with what Brett was just saying. Last night, as I was watching the election results roll in, the entire time I'm thinking, when are we going to have digital IDs and when are we going to vote on the blockchain? This is ridiculous that we're doing things with paper ballots in 2024 and waiting hours and hours and hours and hours for these things to get counted and for things to be official, when all this could be done on a very public, transparent, digital ledger that everybody can see and everybody can verify. Bring on the blockchain too.
Love it. Bring it on. Bring it on indeed. Look, final headline for today is still election related, but as it relates to the meme market, what exactly happened there? So in general, as we kind of mentioned at the top of the show, all memes pretty much sent around double digits. Most things were up 10 to 20%. But the interesting aspect of all of this was that the new memes were definitely outperforming the old memes. These are the biggest gainers in the last 24 hours and could give us a window into how memes might perform for the rest of the cycle. That's what I started wondering. Obviously, like people like Murad and others are calling for many memes, like multiple memes to go much higher than where they are now, even memes with already high market caps. But very good traders like Alex Kruger have highlighted how the risk reward on higher cap meme coins is pretty risky at this point, and argues that the bigger gains are mainly in low caps and only if you are hardworking and in the trenches on those. He kind of shared this assumption, not an assumption, he shared this framework of thinking about it where it was something like if the meme has like 50% chance of doing a 10x from where it is versus in 2 years versus a 50% chance of going down 90%, then that would be a bad bet. Or something. No, sorry. In the initial one, it's like 50% of doing a 2 or 3x now in 2 years versus a 50% chance of it going down 90% in 2 years. And his position was most coins probably have a 50% chance at best of doing a 2x, which is probably what people are hoping for Bitcoin, or like when something's as large as Pepe with a $4 billion market cap, how confident are you really that it's going to go a 10x from here? But, those types of coins do go 70, 80, 90% down historically. Doge is hugely down based from its previous all-time highs, right? So the risk you're taking on is pretty significant. So the only thing I'd say about that framework is that it is based on the assumption of holding for 2 years, and that's how he was kind of building it out, whereas I don't think that's realistic for anyone in the space at the moment. I think buying low and scaling out of the low caps is probably the way to do it. Or if you are going to go for the higher cap ones, it seems to be the case. I mean, we had Rahim on the other day who's just like every dip he bought and then every rip he sold. And it was reasonably as simple as that. Not trying to hold it for the 10x for Pepe to go to 4 billion to 40, although he might have a moon bag for that. It was mostly like, look, the sentiment is down. We're crushed down 15% on the week. I'm going to buy a bit here and sell it when we're up 10% as soon as we have another good day, because that seems to be a rinse and repeat kind of strategy at the moment. So that's just the update on the meme side. And the interesting part of that is it was Peanut, Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency, Goat, Luce, and Nero that were all the top performing memes in the last 24 hours. Peanut up 100%, Doge up 40%, Goat 45, Luce 39, Nero 30. Not things like Whiff and Pepe and whatever, some of those other majors from earlier on in the cycle. Interesting thing to consider. I don't know 100% how that goes, but I wonder whether it's the newer things that will be hotter sooner compared with others. Any reflections from that, boys, before we close?
Numbers are so big though on the olds. Is that fair to compare? Like you were giving me the list earlier. It's like, of course, the thing that's a 10 million market cap is going to be up higher percentage wise than Doge, right? Like it takes so much money to move that same coin, that same percentage. So like, yeah, like there's probably some signal there, but there's also a lot of noise just because of the magnitude of difference.
Very fair point. Sam, final points.
Just I like the model that you use in terms of expected value. So looking at the probability of something going up versus down, I think a lot of finance TradFi people use that in terms of working out, okay, well, what are good bets based on a risk return basis. And I think we'll probably end up seeing that as traditional finance comes into the space. And if they start gobbling up memes specifically, maybe we'll see those models play out a little bit more.
Love it. Guys, that was a great show. Thanks so much for joining us as always. Thanks so much for co-hosting with me, Brad and Sammy. Thanks, Funky, for your contributions as always. And thank you so much for joining us, guys. We're talking a lot about how mainstream media is faltering, crypto apps, crypto media is prospering. We are very grateful that you chose to spend your hour to figure out what on earth was going on over the last 24, 48 hours with us. We hope we can do that many more times in the future. Have a wonderful day. Take care. We will be back with you tomorrow. Bye-bye.